The emergency session convened at Imperial General Headquarters in Tokyo during late July 1945 assembled senior military commanders to assess strategic situation following Potsdam Declaration, demanding Japan's unconditional surrender. Admiral Soemu Toyoda, serving as Chief of Naval General Staff, reviewed intelligence documenting that Allied coalition, including United States, Britain, Soviet Union, and China, was unified in demanding complete Japanese capitulation without negotiated terms. General Yoshijiro Umezu, as Chief of Army General Staff, presented analyses showing that Japan faced simultaneous threats from American forces approaching home islands, British Commonwealth armies advancing through Southeast Asia, Chinese forces controlling vast territories, and potential Soviet entry into Pacific War. The recognition that world powers had coordinated strategy for Japan's destruction created realization that isolated island nation confronted global coalition possessing overwhelming material advantages. Prime Minister Kantaro Suzuki presided over Supreme War Council meeting during early August, attempting to navigate between military commanders insisting on continued resistance and civilian officials recognizing that prolonging war guaranteed national destruction. Suzuki had been appointed April 1945 following resignation of General Kuniaki Koiso with mandate to explore peace possibilities while maintaining military morale. The political challenge was that Supreme War Council required unanimous consent for major decisions, creating a situation where single military leader could prevent acceptance of surrender terms. The institutional deadlock meant that Japan's government couldn't respond decisively to Allied demands, even when strategic situation had become hopeless. Admiral Mitsumasa Yonai, serving as Navy Minister, represented faction within military leadership, recognizing that continuing war was futile and that accepting Allied terms represented only means of preserving Japanese nation, if not regime. Yonai had opposed tripartite pact with Germany and Italy during 1940 and had consistently warned that war with United States couldn't be won. The strategic assessments that Yonai presented to Supreme War Council emphasized that American naval blockade had severed Japan from overseas resources, that strategic bombing was destroying cities and industries, and that planned invasion would result in catastrophic casualties without affecting outcome. Yonai's advocacy for accepting Potsdam Declaration faced opposition from Army Minister Korichika Anami, who insisted that honorable peace required guaranteeing emperor's position and avoiding occupation. The intelligence reports reaching Japanese High Command during July 1945 documented Allied force concentrations, suggesting that invasion of home islands was imminent. The reconnaissance data showed American carrier task forces operating near Japanese waters, amphibious assault shipping assembling at forward bases, and air operations intensifying, indicating preparation for major offensive. The strategic analyses concluded that American invasion would likely target Kyushu during autumn 1945, followed by assault on Kanto Plain near Tokyo during spring 1946. The military preparations that Japan had implemented through Ketsugo Operation involved deploying millions of personnel for defending beaches, but commanders recognized that kamikaze operations and civilian militia couldn't prevent invasion's success given American material superiority. Foreign Minister Shigenori Togo attempted diplomatic initiatives exploring Soviet mediation for arranging negotiated settlement that would preserve imperial institution and avoid occupation. The approach to Soviet Union reflected desperate hope that Stalin might facilitate terms more favorable than unconditional surrender that Potsdam Declaration demanded. The Japanese proposals offered territorial concessions and other inducements, attempting to interest Soviets in mediating rather than joining Allied war effort against Japan. The fundamental miscalculation was assuming that Soviet Union would prioritize relationship with Japan over alliance with United States and Britain when Stalin had committed to entering Pacific War within 3 months of Germany's defeat. The atomic bombing of Hiroshima on August 6th reached Tokyo through fragmentary reports that single bomb had destroyed entire city, killing tens of thousands instantly. The initial intelligence was incomplete because communications with Hiroshima had been severed by blast, but reconnaissance flights confirmed that unprecedented destruction had occurred. Admiral Toyoda and General Umezu received scientific briefings explaining that atomic weapon represented new category of destructive capability far exceeding conventional bombs. The strategic implication was that United States possessed means for destroying Japanese cities without invasion and without risking American casualties that defending forces might inflict. The technological shock, combined with recognition that additional atomic attacks might follow, created urgency about surrender decisions that military resistance arguments couldn't address. The Soviet declaration of war on August 8th, an invasion of Manchuria, represented strategic catastrophe, eliminating any possibility of mediated settlement while creating two-front war that Japan couldn't sustain. The news reached Supreme War Council during evening of August 8th, confirming that diplomatic initiatives through Moscow had failed completely and that Soviet armies numbering over 1 million soldiers were advancing into Japanese-controlled territories. Marshal Alexander Vasilevsky commanded Soviet offensive, employing overwhelming tank and artillery forces against Kwantung Army that had been weakened by transfers to Pacific defenses. The Soviet entry demonstrated that Allied coalition was united in demanding Japan's unconditional surrender and that no great power would assist Japan in arranging favorable terms. General Anami, commanding Japanese ground forces, confronted reality that atomic weapons combined with Soviet invasion created situation where continued resistance couldn't achieve military objectives that justified costs. The Army Minister had argued throughout July that defending home islands would inflict such casualties on invading Americans that negotiated settlement preserving honor would become possible. The atomic bombing demonstrated that United States could destroy Japan without amphibious invasion, eliminating assumption underlying resistance strategy. The Soviet attack eliminated hope for diplomatic mediation, creating recognition that Japan faced choice between accepting Allied terms or experiencing complete destruction through atomic weapons and invasion. The Supreme War Council meeting during night of August 9th to morning of August 10th revealed deadlock between Anami, Toyoda, and Umezu, advocating continued resistance, and Suzuki, Togo, and Yonai supporting acceptance of Potsdam Declaration with condition preserving Emperor's position. The arguments presented by military commanders emphasized that accepting unconditional surrender dishonored sacrifices of Japanese soldiers and civilians who had died during war. The counter-arguments from civilian leaders stressed that prolonging resistance guaranteed additional atomic attacks, Soviet advances, and American invasion that would destroy Japanese nation entirely. The institutional paralysis where unanimous consent was required, but 3 military leaders opposed surrender, created crisis necessitating Emperor's intervention. Emperor Hirohito, summoned to Imperial Conference during early morning hours of August 10th, broke deadlock by stating that continuing war would result in national extinction and that accepting Potsdam Declaration represented only means of preserving Japanese people and imperial institution. The emperor's decision represented unprecedented intervention into political and military decision-making, reversing traditional practice where emperor ratified consensus rather than imposing resolution. The sacred voice declaring that surrender was necessary provided political cover for civilian and military leaders who supported capitulation while obligating military officers who opposed surrender to accept emperor's judgment. The period between August 10th acceptance of surrender with condition preserving imperial prerogatives and August 15th public announcement involved desperate attempts by military factions to prevent capitulation through coup d'état. Major Kenji Hatanaka and other young officers attempted seizing Imperial Palace and preventing broadcast of Emperor's surrender announcement, believing that senior commanders would support continued resistance once fait accompli was presented. General Shizuichi Tanaka, commanding Eastern District Army, suppressed coup attempt, ensuring that Emperor's recording announcing surrender could be broadcast. The failed uprising demonstrated that significant elements within military opposed surrender even after Emperor's decision, but that senior commanders were unwilling to support rebellion against imperial will. The broadcast of Emperor's surrender announcement on August 15th reached Japanese population and military forces, creating shock, as Hirohito's voice was heard publicly for first time, explaining that war situation had developed not necessarily to Japan's advantage, and that accepting Allied terms was necessary. The euphemistic language obscured reality of complete defeat, but message was unmistakable that resistance was ending and that occupation would follow. The reactions among military personnel ranged from relief that destructive war was concluding to rage that Japan was surrendering without invasion having occurred. The suicides of military officers, including General Anami, who committed seppuku on August 15th, demonstrated depth of despair among those who viewed capitulation as unacceptable dishonor. The formal surrender ceremony aboard USS Missouri in Tokyo Bay on September 2nd involved Foreign Minister Mamoru Shigemitsu and General Yoshijiro Umezu signing surrender documents as General Douglas MacArthur accepted capitulation on behalf of Allied powers. The humiliation of defeated nations' representatives signing unconditional surrender aboard American battleship in Japanese waters symbolized completeness of reversal from December 1941, when Japan had attacked Pearl Harbor, initiating Pacific War. The presence of representatives from Allied nations including Britain, China, Soviet Union, and others demonstrated that Japan's surrender was to global coalition rather than to single power, emphasizing isolation that Japan had experienced during final year of war. When Japanese High Command learned world had turned against them during period from July 1945 Potsdam Declaration through August surrender, the recognition involved confronting that initial calculations about fighting limited war against United States and European colonial powers had evolved into global conflict where Allied coalition possessed unified strategy and overwhelming resources for destroying Japan completely. The diplomatic initiatives attempting to exploit Allied divisions or secure Soviet mediation proved futile, as great powers maintained coordination requiring Japan's unconditional surrender. The military strategies emphasizing inflicting casualties to force negotiated settlement were rendered obsolete by atomic weapons enabling destruction without invasion and by Soviet entry eliminating hope for mediation. The psychological impact on Japanese military leaders of recognizing that global powers were coordinated in demanding unconditional surrender challenged fundamental assumptions about honor and duty that had shaped professional identities. Admiral Toyoda and General Umezu had dedicated careers to serving emperor and nation, believing that military excellence and spiritual commitment could overcome material disadvantages. The confrontation with reality that atomic weapons and global coalition made resistance futile created cognitive dissonance between professional obligations to fight until death and recognition that continued resistance destroyed rather than preserved nation. The resolution for some officers involved suicide, maintaining personal honor while accepting that collective surrender was necessary for national survival. The broader tragedy was that recognition came only after atomic bombings, and Soviet invasion had occurred when earlier acceptance of inevitable defeat might have prevented final catastrophes. The institutional paralysis within Japanese government, where military leaders could block surrender despite hopeless strategic situation, required emperor's unprecedented intervention to break deadlock and accept capitulation. The transformation from regional hegemonic power controlling East Asian territories to defeated nation facing occupation and war crimes trials illustrated how completely strategic situation had reversed from early war period when Japanese forces had achieved rapid victories across Pacific and Southeast Asia. The final recognition that world had turned against Japan came through accumulating evidence during July to August 1945 that no great power would assist Japan in avoiding unconditional surrender, that atomic weapons and Soviet invasion created threats that resistance couldn't counter, and that continuing war guaranteed national extinction rather than honorable peace that military leaders had sought.